On the night of July 15th, 2010, this is how we opened the show. It was a big night. What you are looking at right here is something that we have never seen before. This is the camera on the seafloor at the site of the Deepwater Horizon oil disaster, showing that blown out well not spewing oil into the Gulf of Mexico for the first time in 87 days. The first time. For more than 3 agonizingly long months, residents of the Gulf Coast and people all across the country watched in a state of prolonged horror as hundreds of thousands of gallons of black, sticky, toxic crude oil flowed into one of this country's most treasured bodies of water, the BP oil spill. As days turned into weeks and then weeks turned into months, we all sat essentially helpless as one of the richest corporations the planet has ever known tried and failed and tried and failed and then tried and failed again to contain, let alone stop, that leak in the Gulf of Mexico. But finally, after 87 long days, the country could at least start to breathe again. The flow of oil had been stopped. That was July 15th. That feeling of momentary relief, that feeling that we could finally exhale, that lasted all of 12 days before here we go again.
With the current sensitivity about oil, a spill in Michigan is getting a lot of attention. A leaking pipeline that sent oil into a creek that feeds the Kalamazoo River. And while booms have been deployed, an estimated 848,000 gallons of oil has already escaped. Trails of oil sheen can be seen all the way down the river, far from the bulk of the spill.
Less than 2 weeks after BP finally managed to plug their leaking well in the Gulf of Mexico, it happened again. But instead of BP this time, it was a Canadian oil company called Enbridge. And instead of watching the people of Louisiana and Mississippi and Florida begin to fear for their own livelihood, now it was the people of Michigan. The Kalamazoo River was in an instant transformed into a sea of oil. A 30-inch pipeline, a big 2.5-foot wide pipeline that ran beneath the surrounding wetlands, ruptured out of nowhere. It sent oil rushing into the Kalamazoo River. It sent entire Michigan communities into a state of emergency.
About 877,000 gallons of oil have spilled out into the creek here near the Kalamazoo River. I spoke with an official at the state, and they say this may be the worst oil spill ever in the Midwest.
What happened along the Kalamazoo River in Michigan 2 years ago would soon become the single most expensive onshore oil spill in U.S. history. And that's because there was one key difference between what happened off the coast of Louisiana, what had happened in all other major oil spills, and what happened in Michigan 2 weeks later. What happened off the Gulf Coast was the sort of spill that we've sadly sort of grown accustomed to dealing with as a country. It was a crude oil spill. We are not very good at cleaning up crude oil, but we at least have a lot of experience trying to do that. What happened in Michigan, however, was not crude oil. It was something called tar sands oil. Tar sands oil that was being transported from Canada. And as it turns out, we have no freaking clue how to clean up tar sands oil when that kind of oil spills. Crude oil generally floats to the top of the water, where at least some of it can be skimmed off. But tar sands oil doesn't do that. Tar sands oil sinks to the bottom of whatever it's in. How do you get oil off the bottom of a riverbed? Good question. Michigan residents saw their once pristine river essentially turn into a test lab for how to even try to clean up tar sands oil spills. The best they could come up with was to literally shake the riverbed, to agitate the riverbed with big machines in order to try to make the oil temporarily rise to the top where they could get at it. Sorry, Michigan, that's all we've got. Ultimately, the people who live along the Kalamazoo River did not have to wait 1 month for the oil company to clean up their mess. They didn't have to wait 2 months or 3 months or 4 months or 5 months or 6 months. It took the oil company 2 years to clean up the mess that they made in Michigan. That oil spill happened in July 2010. It was not until 3 weeks ago, this year, that the Kalamazoo River finally reopened to the public. And frankly, it reopened to the public despite the fact that there is still oil submerged beneath that riverbed. So 3 weeks ago, the good people of Michigan got their river back, significantly worse for wear. And today, they got to learn what happened in the first place way back in 2010 on the day that giant spill turned their lives upside down. Today, the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, released findings of their investigation into what happened in that spill. They found that the oil company responsible for that pipeline knew about cracks in that particular stretch of pipeline a full 5 years before the pipe ruptured. Quoting the NTSB, for 5 years, they did nothing to address the corrosion or cracking at the rupture site. But wait, it gets worse. The investigation also revealed that it took the oil company, this company Enbridge, it took them a good 17 hours before they even realized that one of their own pipes had burst. And in that time, they pumped more than 600,000 gallons of oil through the ruptured pipeline and right into the river. The NTSB also found that Enbridge employees did not have adequate skills to deal with pipeline leaks. They found the company didn't bother making sure that enough resources were in place to respond to a spill like this. And thanks to lax government regulations, Enbridge never had to lay out how exactly they would deal with a worst-case scenario.
This accident was a result of multiple mistakes and missteps by Enbridge. Safety is a commitment. It is a requirement. It must be a way of doing business and not just a slogan. If companies can commit to safety with the same vigor that they pursue profits, then we will see integrity management programs with real integrity.
If companies commit to safety with the same vigor that they pursue profits. Is that even tautologically possible? Enbridge, for their part, responded today by saying that they met all regulatory standards at the time of the Kalamazoo River oil spill. Think about that for a second. If that's true, if that's not an endorsement for more and better and more aggressive regulation of this particular industry, it is hard to imagine what would be. Look, when used as directed, we can produce a spill like this, and it'll take 2 years to clean it up, and we'll have no idea how to do it. This week, the week that we were all reminded once again just how incapable we are of cleaning up oil when it spills, particularly tar sands oil. This week is also the week when we learn that the oil sands industry is launching a big, expensive new PR campaign aimed at convincing you how great tar sands are. Not only how great they are, but how when there's a spill involving oil sands, involving tar sands oil, it's really no big deal. And if you'd care to join us all for a big glassful of the July 2010 Kalamazoo River while we talk that over, maybe you can convince the country of that.